Hey everyone. I felt like making a quick video today. Now, normally this would be something I would write a blog about, but I kind of wanted to add a little bit more personal of a touch because this is something that is kind of close to my experience in life and in education. Um, I belong to a couple of groups on Facebook. One in particular is called Hey Audio Student. The group is a way for audio professionals, teachers, researchers, and students to discuss all things audio. And there was a post today which reads, "Hey group, I need some advice. I'm about halfway done with my bachelor's in audio production and I'm hitting a big slump, block, demotivational phase, whatever you call it. Have failed my past 3 classes in a row because the content isn't challenging me, isn't giving me any opportunity to create, and is just not being done. My side project is also stalled, and I've been neglecting my group slash indie label and my DAW, which is a digital audio workstation for those of you unfamiliar with that lingo." The author then proceeds to ask if anyone has ever been in a similar space in their career and how they overcame this challenge. And I wanted to highlight some of the responses. So one says if it's not challenging, you should get a very high grade, which is not really understanding of what the actual problem is. Another one, and this one is particularly infuriating. You aren't failing classes because you're such a rocket scientist that you can't be bothered with it. You're just bumbling down the road to being another dropout with half of a weird degree you probably didn't need to begin with. Go get an internship somewhere cool. Stop doing drugs and alcohol. At no point did this person say that they were doing drugs and alcohol. So that's an assumption based on the replier, and certainly not something that is very empathetic or sympathetic to this person's situation or challenges. The third one that I wanted to highlight says you have to take responsibility for this. Dismissing your projects because they do not seem to be challenging is arrogant and frankly silly. How is this arrogant? Like, how reaching out to the community to ask if anybody has gone through this and just to kind of explaining a problem they're going through isn't an arrogant thing to me. So I don't understand that thinking or that response. Anyway, those are just a few of the callous and unsympathetic comments on that post. And I'm really glad that most of those people have never had to experience what the poster's experiencing. They've never had to experience what it is to sit in a class that is not challenging and not knowing or being emotionally or mentally mature enough in knowing how to deal with that. I'm glad that they've never had to sit in a classroom for hours on end with a teacher who either couldn't or wouldn't engage them, or most likely they're among the 80% of people who are your average B and C students who feel challenged by just about anything that is handed to them. Now, obviously, you might be asking, why am I taking this so personally? And the reason is because I was one of those students. You might not know this about me, but I was a straight A student all through grade school and junior high. I was in the gifted program. I was in advanced placement courses my entire adolescence. And then when I got into high school, I got thrown in with the rest of the pack. And that's not to say that I think myself higher than they are. But when you're used to advancing at a certain pace and then all of a sudden you're forced to slam on the brakes when you're 14 years old, it's quite a shock, right? So I want to talk a little bit of neuroscience with you for a minute. So at the age of 14, the adolescent brain shows continued growth of capacity for abstract thoughts. Between 14 and 18, adolescents develop a greater capacity for setting goals. They develop deeper moral reasoning, and they begin to think more deeply about the meaning of life. With those come changes in self-control and emotional behaviors and reactions, and most importantly, the capacity of a person to learn will never be greater than during adolescence. So in a nutshell, what that all boils down to is that between the ages of 14 and 18, we should be being challenged at a higher level than at any other point in our lives before or after. But, picture this, if you will. You're driving 80 on a highway for 9 years, and then all of a sudden, you're forced to slow down to 40 for the next 4 years. There are changes in emotional reactions, and as an adult, if you're going 80 down the highway and you have to slow down to 40, I imagine that most of us would experience some form of road rage. Now take that emotion, take that frustration, and you put it into the body of a 14-year-old whose emotional reactions are changing and developing. How much greater do you think that level of frustration would be? Okay? Now, as teens, our hormone systems are also evolving, which includes stress hormones. So if you're used to driving 40, then nothing has changed for you. You don't experience stress, you don't experience frustration because this is what you've known. But if you're used to going faster, if you're used to advancing at a faster pace, the effect of that is going to be a lot more severe. There's also a point to be made about the time period when I went through this. I was in high school from 1993 to 1997. The No Child Left Behind Act was officially enacted in 2001, but it was actually a reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which was signed in 1965. Prior to No Child Left Behind, George Bush, who was then the presidential candidate, made a number of campaign promises related to educational reform. And one of the key ideas of No Child Left Behind was to help bridge the gap between poor and high-performing students and districts. What this did was it led to the introduction of standardized testing, which faced a number of criticisms, including one which suggested that the focus on testing encouraged teachers to teach a narrow subset of a particular subject in order to increase test performance rather than to promote an in-depth understanding of the material, of the curriculum. How this plays out in real time is that extra time is paid to students who need extra help while the rest of the class sits and waits. Now, my mother, who was a math teacher for several years, used to try and explain this to me, that the goal was to reach the larger 80% of students that are your B and C students that we mentioned before. My counter to that was always, that leaves 10% at the bottom and 10% at the top, right? So if we have to slow down so that the bottom 10% doesn't get left behind, what happens to the other 10%, the 10% at the top? Do they just sit and wait patiently, or do they get bored and check out? And I fell into the latter category. And this is not an issue that stopped in the 2000s. This is something that is still happening today with the Every Student Succeeds Act of 2015. Now, Every Student Succeeds did replace No Child Left Behind, but it doesn't eliminate the provisions related to standardized testing. So, you're still seeing that standardized testing argument even to this day. Now, while I didn't excel in high school as I was capable, I fully expected college to be different. I took a gap year from 97 to 98 after I graduated. And when I entered college for the first time in 1998, I discovered that it really wasn't any different than high school. You have classes that you have to take, and they tell you that you have to take them regardless of what it is that you want to study or what it is that you're interested in. For years, that had been my understanding, that when you reach college, you get to study whatever you want and you get to choose your own classes. But I discovered that not to be the case. I didn't take the SATs, but I did take college placement exams. And upon my first meeting with a counselor, I was told that I'd have to take college algebra and English 1A, which is college composition for any of you that are not familiar with that course number. My counselor told me that I had the highest English scores that she had ever seen. And yet, I'm being told that I had to take a first year English course. So, what even was the point of taking the test, right? I had also taken trigonometry and pre-calculus as a high school junior. So why am I being told that I had to take yet another algebra course, right? I took pre-algebra when I was in the 7th grade. I took algebra 1 when I was in the 8th grade. And I took algebra 2 as a sophomore in high school. I've taken essentially 3 years of algebra, and now I have to take another year of algebra. It didn't make any sense to me. On top of that, I knew early on, back then, that I wanted to be a music major. And one of the requirements of being a music major at Shasta College was you had to take an applied music course. And my counselor, after having a conversation with me, enrolled me in applied voice because it was offered on campus. I wouldn't have to leave campus in order to take that course. What was not explained to me was that the applied course was actually your specific major. So as a music major, you have to declare an instrument as your focus. So in my first semester of college, I was a vocal major, despite having played the piano at that point for 11 years and played the drums for 9 years. And my vocal experience was only that I had sung in choir for 1 year at that point. And when I finally discovered that I was officially a vocal major, I reacted how I imagine a normal 18-year-old would react if you were told that the major that you thought you had declared wasn't actually the major that you were stuck in. And, you know, at 18, I didn't have the knowledge or the resources to change that, to get out of it. So I did feel like I was stuck as a vocal major, and that's not what I wanted to do. I mean, picture you have a passion for science. Picture that you have a passion for chemistry, and you want to declare as a chemistry major. And in your first semester, after you thought that you've declared for a chemistry major, they say, oh, actually, you're a geology major. Now, it's related to what you want to study, but it's not what you want to study. At 18 years old, how would you react to that? How would you deal with that, right? After that semester, I decided that, college just wasn't for me. I wanted it to be, but it just wasn't. I did try to go back multiple times between then and 2003 when I moved to Denver, and I managed to knock out a few general education requirements, but at that point I was just spinning my wheels and not really going anywhere. So to bring this kind of full circle, and back to the Hey Audio Student post, I truly understand what the author is going through because I went through it. And it took me almost 20 years to find myself in a place where I was mentally and emotionally able to dedicate myself to being a student. I believe that part of the issue the first time around was that I didn't have a clear goal, right? I knew I wanted to be a music major, but what comes next? What comes after that? What am I gonna do with that? Most of the time when I would tell people that I was a music major or that I wanted to be a music major, the immediate question that I was asked after that was, oh, do you want to be a music teacher? And no, I did not want to be a music teacher. I in years since, I've been told that I'd be a good teacher, or I've been encouraged to go into teaching, and I think it would be something that I'd be good at and something that I might even enjoy. But at the time, I did not want to be a music major. So I kind of put that in my head a little bit to say, oh, well, as a music major, what really are my options, right? Um, so I didn't have a goal. But when I went back in 2000, when I started back in 2017, I had a much clearer picture in my mind, and I understood that each step that I took was a step towards that goal, right? I have to take statistics. I have to take just a math class. I took statistics. I decided I did not want to do college algebra, so I took something that I thought was more interesting. So I took statistics, and I'm sure that there's some of you out there saying statistics is interesting. It was to me. It was to me. Um, so I realized that statistics really doesn't have anything to do with music, doesn't have anything to do with piano or percussion or any of those things. But my goal was to finish my degree, and this was a step towards that goal. But again, this was not something that I had, or this wasn't something that I had the capacity to understand when I was 18 years old. I mean, it took a while to get there. Um, and in that process, did I have my share of non-challenging courses? Of course I did. Absolutely. At that point, I'd been playing piano for 30 years, right? I started when I was 7. I went back to school, I was, 38? So I've been playing for 31 years. I still had to take 3 semesters of piano, which, I mean, not challenging for me at all. And that's not to say that I'm a virtuoso pianist. Um, but I'm good. I mean, I have that skill. Um, and there might have been a point earlier on in my life where I would have just decided, okay, well, I'm just not even going to show up to this class. But this time around, I looked at it in a few ways. I looked at it as an easy A. It was a way for me to improve my GPA. And it gave me an excuse to play the piano for an hour every day, which as somebody who loves music and as somebody who was a music major, there's nothing bad about that situation, right? I had to take a biology class, and biology has never been my favorite subject. I mean, this is a class obviously I have to take, but it's not something that I enjoy. So it was just one of those things where I was like, okay, I have to figure out a way to get through this. And as luck would have it, I found that every quiz and every test question was on Quizlet verbatim. Now, whether that was something that the teacher just didn't get, or if they were using the same test questions as another class or something, I don't know how that happened, but literally every quiz question and every test question was on Quizlet verbatim. And I mean, for any of you who are watching this who have to take a class, I'm not promoting that. I'm not condoning that. But it got me through the class. So, that's what I did. I was even able to take non-music classes and pivot my learning experience to incorporate music. One of the best examples of that is when I finally did take English 1A. When I finally did take college composition, we had to do a research paper at the end of the year. And the topic that I decided to write about was the history of the attempted music censorship in this country by our own government. And it's something that's relevant because it's still happening today. It's still something that is discussed in 2023, censorship of music. And that's a whole other topic that I would love to talk about, but it's not really relevant to what I'm doing here. Um, I think once I figured out how to spin certain classes to make them more relevant to my educational goals, college was a much more pleasant experience for me. I truly enjoy learning. I always have, and I feel like I have a hunger for discovering new things and new subjects. Um, and the point of all of this, the point of this video, is that maybe the poster is going through some of the same motions that I went through. Um, so yeah, the posts and the responses on it were very personal to me. Um, you know, to use a now term, I was a little triggered by it. Um, so, I decided to shoot this video rather than just writing a post, a post on Facebook or a blog or something to that effect. Um, I kind of wanted to give it a little bit of a personal spin, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you stuck through. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you learned something about me, and maybe even learn something about yourself. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll talk to you soon.
Now you go through St. Louis, Joplin, Missouri.